Hey everybody, and welcome to Curtis Angle here on the Chairshot Radio Network and in partnership with Turnbuckle TV. Today, I've called in two of the friends. It's about time I get you here on Curtis Angle, both of you making your debut since... Well, first guest, I've got Jonas here, who calls me the Brock Lesnar of his podcast. Jonas, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, really well. Thanks for having us on.
Nah, really happy, two of the closest people that I talk to in this community, so I'm really excited about how these couple of episodes will play out. And again, we've got the lovable Mags. Mags, how's it going, mate?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not fine. Not after yesterday's massive shock to the system. But can I at least be the Drake Maverick of the podcast then?
The Drake Maverick. You can be the Drake Maverick. Are you Drake Maverick to Jonas EC3
then? That's quite a possibility, to be fair.
But no, so here today, just to try and give a rundown of everybody that's been released from WWE. I know it was quite hard for everybody keeping up with what was going on. There was so many people going. There might be more people that we are discussing that once this is released, it can come out that they've also been released. Obviously, NXT was happened last night. SmackDown happens on Friday, and I think it'll be a case of more releases coming off the fallout of those two shows personally. But yeah, so Jonas, we'll start with you. What did you think of everything? This, to me, it's transcended wrestling. I don't think anything like this has happened before.
Yeah, I mean, it did take a lot of us by surprise, didn't it? It came out of the blue. There was a couple of names released initially, and then it just seemed to kind of roll from there, really. And as the night went on, you got through 9, 10, 11 o'clock, you see all these reports. The list was growing. It just became more and more unreal, to be honest with you. And yeah, the disbelief. I mean, when you saw a lot of the videos, the one from Drake Maverick, Spud, that really stands out, to be honest with you. And that's kind of what really hit home. But when you think about it, under the current climate, the current situation with everything that's going on, as a business, I'm surprised it didn't do something like this sooner, because, they're not open for business as we know WWE from over the decades. So, yeah, it was kind of inevitable in one way, but very, very shocking for the most part.
Do you think it's the timing, and Mags, I'll let you answer this one, do you think it's the timing that they just get considered essential workers? So here in the UK, I can't think of any essential workers that have been furloughed, that have been like, nope, you're not getting paid, or actually, we've got to let you go. So not only have we done that, but then there was the reports Linda McMahon made a considerable donation to one of the government organisations in Florida. Is that why they've been deemed essential? So in one hand, you've got all these workers that, yep, you're essential, you need to still go to work. Oh, but we can't afford you because we've just paid to essentially get that status. What's your thoughts on the image of WWE right now?
In the terms of the internet wrestling community, it's absolutely in the toilet. There's no way as a fan you can paint this as good. I can't see a bright light as a fan. In terms of the bigger picture, the majority of fans won't know or really care, to be fair, and that's the hard truth of it. I'm absolutely devastated. Some of these wrestlers I have watched for years, and I love them, and it's heartbreaking to see, like John has said, watching the Drake Maverick video. I don't get emotional much, but that brought tears to my eyes because you could see it hit him, and it hit him hard. But it's business, and unfortunately, this is Vince McMahon. I don't understand how fans expect anything different from him. This is a guy who worked with someone who killed the girlfriend, who paid for that to be buried. This is a guy who has worked multiple times with someone who's come out as a known racist. This is the guy who when someone's threatened to kill him, like the Ultimate Warrior, he's gone back and worked with him. He doesn't care. Feelings do not come into this guy's thought process. It's all about money, and this is what this boils down to. It boils down to money, and it's a sad state of affairs. But it's a business at the end of the day, and that they're not here to be our friends. They're not here to hold our hand and say everything's going to be all right. They're here to make money for the shareholders, and it's just the sad state of finance, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, guys. In about 10 years' time, when they do Series 10 of Dark Side of the Ring, this last 7 days could very well fill a whole episode, couldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It'll go down in wrestling history. Like I said, I think what's happened here has changed the face of professional wrestling. I think in so many different aspects, you've got David Starr, who's been leading the movement against these big corporations of not protecting their workers. Like, he's going to be really busy over these next few weeks because, hey, what are these guys going to be doing? They may get some sort of pay. For example, I don't know the ins and outs, but Sean Ross Sapp mentioned NXT talent that are getting released will be paid for 30 days and then they can go do whatever they want. Mm-hmm. So are they going to have the 60 or 90-day no-compete clause in their contract?
I think the issue there is that the NXT staff are actually employees, where when you're on the main roster, you're then an independent contractor. So I would assume, and again, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, that the independent contractors will still be on this 90-day no-compete clause, whereas the actual employees are just being basically, that's your severance pay. Off you go.
That's kind of my understanding as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think any of them, say, if AEW did try and knock, or some other promotion wanted them to take promo packages for that company to say, hey, like, I'm coming? Do you think any of them might do that, as if, well, you're not going to pay me my full wages, like, fuck you, essentially?
It's now a buyer's market, though.
Yeah.
It's and to be honest, I don't think there's many buyers. In an ideal world for me as a fan, AEW and New Japan and even the likes of Impact or Ring of Honor would snap these guys up, but I just don't see it. I mean, Tony Khan and the Khan family are richer than the McMahons, granted, but they're also billionaires, and they didn't become billionaires by throwing money away. Yeah. And right now, they have no way of recouping that money. So there is nobody getting signed right now. I guarantee it. Them wrestlers will still be there in September or October, whenever it kind of like it reopens up to having shows. But right now, I cannot see a massive influx of wrestlers signing for another company. It's just a horrible time to release a lot of people when there's no way for them to get further work. It's awful. Absolutely awful.
All the companies out there, they're working to budgets. They're working to budgets, even if you've got the Khan family, billionaires, New Japan, even the smaller companies, they're all working to budget. So they haven't got the purse strings to hire new wrestlers at this time in this climate when there's no shows going on, there's no revenue, there's no merch, there's no seat revenue, no gates. So these wrestlers that were released yesterday, they could be sitting on the sidelines for a long time.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think AEW could be the exception. I think they might see it as we can still film TV. They're still going in the ratings head-to-head with NXT. And could they see it as a gamble? Like, sometimes you've got to spend money to make money. And we'll go into the list in more depth shortly, but you've got especially two people on that list that have been, at one point, the most over thing in professional wrestling in Zack Ryder and in Rusev. Not to mention, there's Gallows and Anderson. So in them four, you've got such a brand behind them. Could it be, hey, if you're willing to work, you can come to shows. However, if not, we can do some sort of pre-contract agreement where, like, right, whilst not on TV, we can pay you this much money. But then once things are lifted, we'll pay this. So then that way you've got a smaller downside, just so they've got some income tying themselves over. But that means they're locked into AEW. And could it be worth, hey, let's pay these guys, let's help these guys for 2, 3, 4 months. But then when it comes, we've got somebody that's going to make money in the long run in terms of Rusev.
It's It's a possibility, definitely, and a best case scenario is that some of these guys do get picked up and they do are able to kind of like integrate into AEW. But on the flip side, it's also possible that AEW might make some cuts. I mean, right now if you're watching the weekly program, you're seeing a lot of the same wrestlers over and over again, and there's talent that are not likely to be used in the next 3 to 6 months. They could easily be furloughed or even released. And yeah, I don't think AEW are kind of bulletproof in this. I don't think any company is particularly bulletproof. And I think WWE doing this shows that this is a long way to go yet. There's no hiding away from the fact that a lot of talent are going to go, and I think a lot of talent from AEW are going to go as well. So it's not as cut and dried as these guys just shifting over to Florida.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that. However, I can't see AEW doing it personally just because of the public image they've made. Like WWE, everyone knew they were hoarding talent and their wage bill was massive. So if something like this happened, it's like, oh shit, now we've got to be a bit more sensible with our money. Whereas AEW, I imagine they've been working within their budget so far, not overspending on talent. And when you've had Tony Khan come out and say, anybody that wants to stay at home and not wrestle on TV because of this current pandemic, don't worry, it won't lose you your sport, it won't lose you your titles, blah, 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 blah. To then release talent, especially last night during all this going on, Tony Khan tweeted the following: "Thank you, hashtag AEW fans, for supporting, hashtag AEW Dynamite. It means so much to all of us at AEW Wrestling and AEW on TNT that we're able to bring new episodes to you tonight and every Wednesday night. Thank you for the bottom of my heart for supporting our wrestlers, staff, and wrestling company." So I personally think because they're the company for the people, by the people, they may not recruit.
Yeah, I mean, if I was an AEW talent, I'd be more reassured at that statement than anything WWE have done in the last 24 hours. So, there is still a possibility that AEW might, cut the fat somewhere down the line. But at the moment, I think the AEW talent are safe. They've got the reassurance there. I still don't think, there's any chance in the next 6 months that anybody new is going to get signed, because I just don't think that it's a sensible move for Tony Khan to be doing that, especially when there's a lot of talent that doesn't appear on the weekly shows, barely gets on Dark. So I think, it's a tough one. You've got a lot of really, really fantastic talent that got released yesterday that are going to be a credit to some company. I mean, on top of the Revival leaving last week, it's been a hell of a 7 days, hasn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the Revival. We'll jump straight into that one. They went part of this big plan to recoup some money. I think it was a case of their contracts were coming up, so it's like, okay, we'll release you, pay you a little bit less, and you can't work anywhere else anyways for this time being. What was your favourite thoughts? Like, what was your favourite moments of the Revival during their time in NXT and WWE? And where do you think they may end up, and where would you want them to end up? And Mags, will start with you.
My favourite moment for them was the pop that they received when they first went up to the main roster. I thought that we've had a lot of NXT talent that have done really well when they've gone up, but we've also had a hell of a lot that have kind of floundered. And I had high hopes for the Revival, and when they first got that initial pop, I thought, yeah, we're onto a winner here. And how quickly that flopped. In terms of where they're going to go, I don't think I'd like to see them do a run in New Japan, to be quite fair. I think that tag division is absolutely floundering, and I think they would do well to revive it as such. But all arrows point to them going to AEW, especially with all the kind of fuck the Revival stuff, and then going on the chat with the Young Bucks. It's kind of tacked on that they will go to AEW.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think long term it's got to be AEW. We've got to see that dream match between the Bucks and the Revival somewhere down the line. I wouldn't be surprised though if they did a bit of a Marty Scurll for a few months and maybe appeared in NWA when that's back up and running when they're recording. It's the perfect sort of setting, the perfect sort of scene for a team like that, the perfect environment with more of a wrestling based product. But then the revival, I think it probably will boil down to money and which company can afford them and give them their creative freedom, and that probably will come down to an AEW long term.
Yeah, I don't know if it will come down to money per se. I think they've proved that with turning down big contract offers from WWE. I think it will be more of a creative freedom and ticking stuff off that bucket list. So, Mag, you mentioned New Japan. They'd have some great matches with that style. Obviously, facing like Tanahashi and Ibushi. And I don't want to get into too many dream matches because everybody will be able to listen to that over on our One More Match episode. But I'd like to see all Japan have a fantastic tag division. I think they've got the best tag division in Japan, and I would like to see them, like John has said, with the Mighty Scale thing, like appear in NWA and maybe have that year where they're like, right, AEW will sign for you, but we want to do this, this, and this. So maybe do the World Tag League with New Japan. Maybe do something in NWA to maybe become their tag champions, or do tours in the UK and just tick off all these bucket lists before settling down again.
Or freelance.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, all the wrestlers that were cut and all the ones that are probably going to get cut in the future, they need to come to the UK because our market would absolutely eat them up. So that is a given that they should all at least do a bit of a tour around the UK.
Oh, 100%. With the revival, any company that if the revival say, right, we're coming across from this date to this date, even if somebody wasn't running a show, they would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd build a show around them.
Yeah.
Of course would.
Exactly, and obviously, touch wood that everything does happen. The Dream Tag Team Invitational, Fight Club Pro, end of July, beginning of August. What better way to introduce arguably the best tag team in the world to the UK scene by bringing them to that? So hopefully, it's going to be an interesting time. But I think let's move across to the some of the releases that we had last night. So to begin with, we had a lot of referees, trainers, producers, and writers released. We had WWE Hall of Famer Kurt Angle, which that one will stop at, just because I was quite surprised that they did that. Obviously, a former world champion. And what was your thoughts seeing, my podcast namesake, Kurt Angle, be released?
Go on, Max.
I was just going to say I was hurt but not shocked. Because obviously he wasn't part of the first run of names to come through. I think we'd seen like Lance Storm and Shane Helms come through, so they obviously were culling producers, and Kurt's fairly new at the job. I'm assuming he's on quite a big contract there, obviously being a long-time pro wrestler. Yeah, I was shocked. I wasn't shocked. In fact, there's not, to be quite fair, there's not a lot of them I actually am shocked at. It's more the timing than anything. We've obviously been used to, as wrestling fans, a kind of a yearly cut of wrestlers, and we haven't seen that for maybe 3 or 4 years. So it's almost like we're getting all that in one foul swoop. But it doesn't make it any easier to swallow. But yeah, Kurt was a bigger, but unfortunately, I wasn't shocked at all, to be fair.
Yeah. What about you, Jonas?
What regarding Kurt? I was surprised, but I think since his WrestleMania match with Corbin last year, we haven't really seen him much in front of the camera. He's been a little bit, out of sight, out of mind sort of thing. I know he's been doing a lot of backstage producing and whatnot. Maybe he's just seen as not an essential part of the puzzle when things get rolling again. I know that a lot of the producers and referees and backstage staff, they've been put on furlough. Yeah. Are we sure as to whether Kurt has been actually released or whether he's been put on furlough?
I believe Kurt's one of them that had been confirmed to be released. Okay. I'm sure he came out just saying like thank you for the run and stuff like that. And most of them that are doing that seems to be the ones where... Yeah, like he could go back. Any of these people that have been released could go back. It'll just be depending on circumstances, whether they want to But yeah, the tweet that Kurt Angle said, I wanted to say thank you to the WWE for the time I spent there. I made many new friends and had the opportunity to work with so many talented people. To the superstars, continue to entertain the WWE universe as well as you possibly can. They're the best fans in the world. Hashtag it's true.
Yeah, and it could have been a mutual thing as well. Maybe he just wasn't happy doing what he's doing. Maybe he thinks there's a bigger future for him on the convention market, or maybe writing books or anything like that. Really, but I think he's the type of personality that's very engaging, captivating. I think he needs to be in front of an audience, in front of a camera. Behind the scenes, I don't think really fits in him.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we might see Kurt wrestle again?
God, I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not as well. Mainly for his own health.
Yeah, exactly. He's too broken down.
Yeah.
Okay. It's one of those, because before he went to WWE, he was putting out those good matches in TNA, doing stuff with Cody Rhodes on the independent circuit. Part of me would like a better last match for Kurt. I'm not going to lie, but it'd be interesting. But whatever he does, I hope he's had that closure that he needed with WWE. Some of the other trainers and agents and stuff that had been released: Billy Kidman, Norman Smiley, Mike Rotunda, Pat Buck, Fit Finlay, Sean Daivari, Scott Armstrong, Sarah Stock, Shane Helms, Lance Storm, Andrea Listenberger, who's a writer who wrote the Mandy and Otis storyline, and then obviously WWE referee Mike Chioda's been released as well.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Chioda's been with the company over 30 years, and that one was probably one of the biggest shocks that came out last night, to be honest with you, purely because he's been there through all of our wrestling fandoms, I thought he was a lifer, to be honest with you. So I was really shocked when Chioda got released. I'm sure he'll be able to pick up employment on the indie circuit or maybe somewhere else when business is back to normal around the US. I mean, it's the same for Fit Finlay. I think he's been an agent, backstage producer for the best part of 20 years. I know he got fired I think in the early 2010s, around 2011, 2012, for some nonsensical reason that he got rehired the year later. Been a staple in growing the women's division in WWE. And surprised again, such a great mind for the business. Lance Storm, he's only been a producer for a few months, I think. From the back end of last year,
school.
He closed, and that's the heartbreaking thing. Is he's just closed his school, and there were so many academy recruits that had come from the Lance Storm Academy training facilities that had actually got brought up to the WWE. So he was, a big part of the likes of Emma's and one or two others that had come up over the years, and now that school isn't even around for him to fall back on. But some of the names there, I mean, Mike Rotunda as well. I mean, he's been part of the business for another 30 years as a talent, as a backstage producer, an agent. And of course, he's the father of Bo Dallas and the Fiend, of course. So that could be a little bit awkward. But a lot of these have been said to be put on furlough, so there's a chance that they could be brought back. But when that will happen, if that will happen, is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I think the Matt Rotunda one kind of hammers down the point to me that this was done without emotion. Because he's, like you said, he's the father of one of the biggest stars in the company right now, and he was culled in literally a one sentence press release. So this isn't about emotion for Vince McMahon. I don't think he has emotion when it comes to wrestling. I think it's literally what is best for his bottom line, and that one specifically nails it for me. That it wasn't about emotion at all.
No, 100%. And regarding the Fit Finlay one, he'd be an asset anywhere he goes. Switchblade Jay White tweeted out last night to Fit Finlay saying, "There's a spot for you in Bullet Club. I'll make you proud." In which Finlay put interesting, and his son David Finlay, obviously out in New Japan, was like, "Bruh." So could we see Fit go out and be Bullet Club, I don't know, mascot, coach? I don't know.
I think a lot of these kind of producers they're in a bit of a better position than the wrestlers are, because whilst your company might not be producing content, you're still going to need that kind of setup behind the scenes. And I think the likes of Finlay, the likes of Lance Storm, Shane Helms have all got really good knowledge and skills in producing. So they're probably more likely to get snapped up than some of the wrestlers are, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree. And I can see one or two of these producers possibly getting backstage jobs with an AEW, whereas the wrestlers might be left out in the cold. But yeah, like you say, Dave Finlay, Fit Finlay's got his son over in New Japan, so I'm sure that there's already conversations happening there.
Yeah. So moving across to some of the in-ring talent across NXT, Raw, SmackDown. So far, the list is showing we've got MJ Jenkins has departed. Alexander, is it Jaksic, has been also released. One of the bigger ones from NXT that I was quite surprised with was Deonna Purrazzo.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they could do so much with her.
Yeah, and a tweet afterwards as well, kind of it read to me like this is something she's been wanting.
Yeah.
The way she said that she's been asking for this for so long, and people knew what that she wanted it. So you mentioned earlier about people kind of being mutually leaving. Maybe she's one of those that is mutually left. And again, with ties that she's got with Marty, I think she's not going to be out of work that long, or when a company is able to take her on, she's definitely going to be one of the first people that get signed up.
Yeah, 100%. Like she'd been sporadically like in WWE for a few years now, like between 2014 and 2017, and didn't really get the chance that she deserved. Like she got cut last minute from the Mae Young Classic, and then they brought her back and signed her full time. May 2018, it was reported that she'd signed. So she's been there for nearly 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
she started to get some exposure over recent weeks and months. She was on NXT quite a bit, and even a few appearances on Raw as well. So she was getting a bit of exposure, and she had a great look. Getting better in the ring. But it's a shame. But it's another one of them young talents that will no doubt find a place somewhere else very soon.
Yeah, I can understand the frustrations. She was essentially treated as enhancement, in my opinion. Where this person's going to go in to do the job, but she's also going to make you look good because she's brilliant as well. But like you said, with Marty running the book at Ring of Honor, I could see her being a staple in that division. I think any women's division in the world will look at her. Obviously, she's got a history in Japan with Stardom, so that could be another possibility. And I think all I'd like to see from professional wrestling and all these people released, or those that can't work at the moment, is when things do lift up, we could have the best content possible, because people have been given so much time to work on their characters. And MLW, for example, they refuse to put their wrestlers at harm. Court Bauer mentioned some of them was like, oh, we could wrestle in a desert, just give us a referee, we'll set up a ring, we'll film it. And he'd even refuse that because he doesn't want to show that we will risk your health for that. Instead, they're working on so many different content and ways that they can develop the company, work on storylines. So I think we'll have a massive creative boom. And like what we'll probably say with every single one of these that we talk about, wish Deonna Purrazzo nothing but the best, and it'll be interesting to see where she ends up.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to two promoters the other day, Dave and Ant from DNA Wrestling over in Suffolk, and they said pretty much the same thing. It's an opportunity for them to, work on storylines for the future, have a bit of a hard reset on their company, really evaluate their position, and a lot of independent promotions are probably going to use this time to do the same thing.
Yeah, and it'll be exciting for us. It really will, and I'm just hoping that they all get through this and we're not going to have many closures or retirements. Like, one thing that took me by surprise last night, I know it's not WWE related, but Chris Ridgway has announced he'll be leaving wrestling in 2021, and that he'll be appearing on a podcast to explain why. And Martin Kirby, he came back from Japan. This has happened, and now he's decided, no, I'm going to retire as well. And they're two incredible talents here in the UK that are going to be stepping away from the business. So I just hope they'll be happy, but I hope we're not going to have too many that are having to do that, because to many, I imagine this has proved that wrestling's not sustainable for them and that they can't afford to jeopardize their family's future in case something like this happened again.
Yeah, I agree. And my concern wouldn't be necessarily for this list or the subsequent US releases. My concern would be for the NXT UK releases, because we can assume it's coming. They are the weakest brand that WWE actually put out now. They've got no episodes in the can. I fear for those guys because they're not earning anything like they're earning a basic normal living wage, and these are going to be the kind of wrestlers that will have to find a full-time job, and maybe they will end up coming away from wrestling, which will be sad. It really will.
I think Mags, you've nailed it on the head there, and I was thinking the same this morning, that the NXT UK brand is the most vulnerable out of all of them under the WWE banner, and like I say, nothing in the can. I don't think Vince McMahon was particularly interested in that kind of product. That was more of a Triple H baby, to be honest with you. So give it a few more days, we could be seeing, that would be the easiest of the WWE brands to close down, possibly in Vince McMahon's eyes anyway. So, yeah, I sincerely hope not, because I think they got something special there, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
I think it'll be gone.
I was just going to say, and looking at the rumours that were coming out this morning, it's WWE have 950 employees on their books, and the potential cuts were into the hundreds. So this isn't. It's not even the tip of the iceberg.
It's a start. Yeah.
And it's scary. I think the only thing that may protect NXT UK is BT Sports, because it's part of that. I think it's part of that contract. I don't think the full brand will get cut, because, like I said with earlier, where will some company think, actually, you're worth the risk for us to pay you for a couple of months just so we can secure you? If WWE tried letting go, say, any of the British Strong Style 3, any of Imperium, Ilya Dragunov, Jordan Devlin, those guys would be able to go anywhere in the world. So I think they'll be the safe ones. I think anybody that's had exposure on American TV would be safe, but unfortunately for the rest of them, I think it could at least be Fairlow that would happen. And it's horrible. It's a shame to see all this happening, and hopefully we don't get any more. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I really hope that we aren't going to get any more people released. Like, when this normally happens each year, some people see it as some excitement, because it tends to be people that you've been a fan of that have been creatively frustrated, but they've been able to go elsewhere. They've been able to regroup for 3 months and then be like, right, let's go. We've already got emotion where we're ending up. On this one, like, they're going to be in limbo, and it just puts people at risk, and it's a shame to see.
I agree. It's like I said at the beginning. As a fan, there's no positive that you can spin this to. Absolutely none whatsoever. These are all incredibly talented wrestlers with now no way of wrestling. It's pretty dark.
Yeah, and the thing that upsets me the most about all of this is the fact that we've been saying for years that WWE and Vince McMahon and the executives, they've been buying up the talents from around the world. They've been hoarding talent. They had over 300 wrestlers on their books amongst all their brands and developmental, up until now, 300 wrestlers, just simply to prevent them from wrestling elsewhere, in the US or around the world. You could probably say, I don't know, maybe 20% of those are being used at any one time. That's probably generous as well. But it was for selfish reasons as to why we had all these people on the books to start off with, and it's come back to bite them in the backside.
Yeah. It's because there can't be a touring company right now. So all these people that we don't see likely just work live events, whereas now they're just a TV company. So they are having to trim it massively because there's only so many people you can use. And a couple more of the releases that we had last night, we had No Way Jose. He'd announced on Twitter that he was one of them that has now departed from WWE, and that he just wishes he knew the last Raw was going to be his last Raw, because he'd have taken it in a little bit more, which it is a shame. And we had Mike and Maria Kanellis as well. So what are your thoughts on those three going with No Way Jose and the Kanellises?
The Kanellises, for me, they've been kind of floating this kind of line for such a long time. I mean, how many reports have we seen where they both have come out and said they want to leave, then they sign a new deal, then they want to leave, and then they sign a new deal. This for me was the least shocking of all, probably, that these two got cut because they put themselves front and center in the fiery line by being so outspoken about their displeasure in WWE. The No Way Jose one, again, it's not a shock, but my concern would be who is going to pick him up, because whilst he was talented in NXT, he hasn't had any opportunity to really show that, and he's literally just been a jobber to the stars. I feel for these guys. I really, really do. There's just no way to. There's just nowhere to put a good spin on it, and I really want to, because generally I'm a fairly positive person about wrestling, but I just can't find a good spin for these guys at all. It's sad.
Yeah, I agree with No Way Jose. Obviously, it'll get work. Like, so many places will use him, especially the independents, because hey, it's WWE star No Way Jose. He'll do the conga, a bit like what Adam Rose was doing. He was still using that to get the bookings. However, with Mike and Maria, yeah, you could see this one come in, and I'm kind of glad, because I loved the Kingdom with Mike Bennett's inception of it. I loved the Miracle. I thought Mike and Maria's work in Impact Wrestling was sublime and one of the best things. And when he went to WWE, I was so excited, and then it was just nothing like that, which was a shame. So I think them two will be fine, whether it's going back to Impact, going back to Ring of Honor, going back to New Japan, maybe AEW, who knows, because obviously they'll be friends with a lot of those guys. I think they'll be okay. It just sucks. Marie was technically on maternity leave.
Yeah. I mean, if I could just jump in now, and I think some of the talent might also be quite excited at the opportunities. There's obviously nothing in the immediate future, but when you look at talent that wasn't used at all or very well, like the Eric Youngs and the EC3s, I think they're going to see this as an opportunity where they can kind of start again. Whereas in the WWE, yes, in NXT, they might have had a little bit of an opportunity. Going up to the main roster, as we know from years now, it doesn't really do anything for the characters we want to get over on the main roster. That's really not down to anything that had happened previously on NXT. But the EC3s, the Eric Youngs, I think that they're going to flourish when business is back open, and I think they are going to do well on the indie circuit, and hopefully do well for themselves and carry on where they left off previously.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. We've seen that with EC3. He put out a promo, he's changed his look completely, and he'll be fine.
That was a very, very proactive way to go with this, and I can't commend him enough for that. That was such a good promo, and yeah, he'll be fine for work.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best talkers about, and yeah, whether it is going back home to Impact Wrestling, AEW, like NWA, I think because he's solid in the ring, he's got a great look, and he's one of the best talkers in the business, and he's going to be fantastic. And same with Eric Young. Any style of wrestling you want, Eric Young can give you. The deranged psychopath, the chain wrestling, the comedic wrestling, tag team wrestling, he can play all of those. And I think, again, Scott D'Amore's running things in Impact Wrestling. He's mates with Eric Young. So, again, those two, it'll be exciting to see what they're going to do moving forward. And I think another one that was on the list in Leo Rush as well. I think Leo Rush is one of the bigger names where people will be probably making contact with him already to be like, what are your plans when this is all over?
Yeah, I was surprised by Lio Rush's release because I since he returned and he became cruiserweight champion, had that run on NXT, I thought he was on the up and up, to be honest with you, and I thought he seems more settled, happier. I know that when he left the first time round, there were circumstances and. He wasn't happy with the politics backstage, but when he came back, I thought he was in a much better place mentally, and he was wrestling really well. And I was surprised to see him on the list of cuts, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was surprised, but then also kind of not surprised because of what you mentioned about he kind of did make a rod for his own back where he was kind of a shit disturber almost. Not saying that he was wrong in any of that. I totally understand his viewpoint, but in the eyes of the company, he did ruffle a few feathers. And I don't want to kind of give out the blanket answer because it's obvious that we can say so-and-so to AEW confirmed and so-and-so to AEW confirmed, but he fits AEW for me probably more than anyone on the list, to be fair, because he's got that kind of half-flying style that would work with pretty much anyone on that roster. And then they've also, like, as they get called, vanilla midgets. He kind of would fit into that AEW style. Just think of the matches he could have with Jungle Boy or Marco Stunt, or even like the likes of Jack Evans, Sammy Guevara. There's just, that guy is so talented, and
he's also very young as well. He's got age on his side.
Is he like 23, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to kind of sound ageist, but when you look at the rest of the list, they're all in their 30s, mid-30s, or maybe into their 40s. But Lio Rush, on the other hand, is kind of at the very bottom end of that in his early 20s still.
Yeah, I think some of those that are mid-30s, they've got their future ahead of them, in my opinion. Like, I think they've got so much creative frustration that they're just going to put the world alight. I think that'll be great. But yeah, as to mention, Lio Rush, 25 years old.
25, wow.
He's got it all. Like, best of Super Juniors, he'd be great for that. You mentioned with AEW, he's got his history with Ring of Honor. So yeah, he'll be safe. I think his charisma alone will get him somewhere. So we'd also had Primo and Epico finally released. Again, there's always been reports that they've been released. Oh no, they're not released. They're just out on loan. They can go work in Puerto Rico, but they're still going to be under contract with WWE because they don't want working elsewhere. And for these, I think it's a team with so much potential to revitalise their career. Give it that injection it needs. Obviously, they've got the Cologne name, so could we potentially? Where do you think you'd see them? Because for me, I'd always like to see them away from WWE, but with Carlito, and just to do the trio of them as the Cologne family.
Yeah, it's a possibility. From the first thing that sprung to mind when I saw that they had got released, I thought they're going to go home. They're going to go back to the dad's promotion. Same. They're going to basically get involved in that business, and because I think Carlito's already back in the fold there with his dad. So yeah, I think that's where I see them instantly going. Could they still make it on with a bigger promotion? Absolutely, but they would seem to be the ones that probably most soured by life in the WWE. How long have they been there? Like 12 years, something like that, and been used very, very sparingly. I think they go home, and I think they go back to Puerto Rico and they help revitalise the family company.
Yeah, 100%. I can see them potentially. MLW would be a good fit. We've seen MLW like embrace like Savio Vega and all the work they've done with like Promociones Dorado and Country Unit. I think MLW use the older talent like Vega and Spirit Squad with Filthy Tom Lawler at the moment. I think they'd be a good fit with that. And again, it'll just be refreshing to see what they've got in mind, and if they can help the dad's promotion in Puerto Rico grow, then that's a positive. Like, all we need is professional wrestling to grow after this, and I think a lot of companies are going to bounce back and are going to be stronger than ever because of the talent that will be available.
Yeah, hopefully so.
So, one that surprised me, two, we had Eric Rowan released and we had Drake Maverick released. So, Eric Rowan was somebody that built on TV massively this past year. And then all of a sudden is gone like that. What's your thoughts on the Eric Rowan release, Jonas?
Well, like you say, it is surprising because he has been used in a relatively featured role. And he even had quite a lengthy... Did he have a feud with Roman Reigns at the back end of last year? And he had some pay-per-view matches as well, which I remember kind of reviewing as well. And that also saw a very brief return of Luke Harper, and that didn't last for long. And then we kind of had this gimmick of what was in the cage, and that never really kind of mounted to anything. And then he's kind of really been a background player. But I did think where they was trying to build him up last year, I thought that they were really going to give him a good push, because before he'd only really been pushed as part of a tag team. So I thought this was the opportunity where they were going to do it as a singles. And that really amounted to nothing, to be honest with you. I thought his matches with Roman Reigns were not too bad. But he's a big guy, a lot of potential. I think he's actually fairly good on the microphone as well. Didn't he have a little bit of a run with Daniel Bryan and a bit of a partnership there, which took our notice quite a bit as well. And I was quite interested in that duo. So he can talk. He's a big guy. I think he will be snapped up because he's quite a unique personality. He didn't really set the world light in WWE, unfortunately. I loved him as part of the original Wyatt family, but that was probably the height for him as far as I was concerned. Another one of them sad stories where it's so much potential wasn't utilised, wasted, but hopefully he lands on his feet. I think he could. He's one of those kind of big men out there that can impress an audience. So hopefully so.
Yeah, I imagine so. His work with Luke Harper was fantastic over the years. I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, he could join the Dark Order." Personally, I wouldn't want to see that. I wouldn't want them two together now. I think Luke Harper doing his own thing as the Exalted One's brilliant. Would you put Eric Rowan in AEW, or do you think he'd be better off going elsewhere?
There's a certain kind of audience out there that getting a little bit fed up with WWE signings or ex-WWE talent going over to AEW. I was really, really into AEW, and I still am, but more so when they kind of start to build their own talent, their own characters, and the future around the likes of Jungle Boy and the kind of homegrown talent, you could say. That's another reason why I really don't want to see many of these cuts go to AEW, to be honest with you. I don't really see Eric Rowan being a good fit for AEW, maybe, I don't know, but I think he needs to go and make his own mark on the world, to be honest with you, whether that be on the Indies to start off with, and maybe with an MLW.
Japan.
I can't really. Maybe Japan. I can't really see him being an automatic fit for AEW. I don't really want. I want AEW to kind of have its own identity, and it seems to be losing that a little bit.
Okay, Max.
Yeah, I agree. I think thinking about Rowan's cut, he kind of stands out to me as maybe one who's has been a mutual cut. Like we've said, he's had pushes that have gone nowhere. He's had this old cage with the toy spider, which was absolutely a fart in church. I can see him looking at his pal Luke Harper, looking how well he started in AEW, and thinking, I could do some of that. And he's kind of like, yeah, I've made money now. Let's test the waters. I agree with Jonas. I don't think he kind of fits that AEW style, and I don't want AEW to become the WWE kind of cast-off company. But I see him fitting in New Japan. From the time I've watched New Japan, they've always had kind of big Western gauging wrestlers, and I think he would fit that mold. The kind of like the Michael Elgin, or even like the Brock Lesnar style of a big muscly like Westerner going in and facing the likes of Ishii, going in facing the likes of Suzuki. Yeah, I think he fits there more than he would in AEW.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of Lance Archer when he was in New Japan up until very recently. So yeah, having that big Westerner would be a good position for him. Yeah.
Yeah. If he was to join one of the stables out there, like, because we've seen, if we get, say, the Cult of Wyndham with Bray Wyatt and The Fiend and stuff like that, and we've got Luke Harper running the Exalted One. In the perfect world, would have Eric Rowan in a different company running his own deranged faction, or maybe being a part of a faction. If he was part of a faction in New Japan, who would you say? I'd personally, Los Ingobernables de Japón. I think they have real. Would you go with that one, or do you think he's not as charismatic enough for that? Or
no, I think they. If I look at all the members of LRJ, and they're all kind of like cool, and Eric Rowan doesn't. He's a good wrestler, but he doesn't come off as cool. Does he?
He can brush his beard.
He's certainly good. He to me shouts out Suzuki-gun. Suzuki-gun, like those quiet kind of vicious heels. He doesn't look like a face to me. I don't think I don't think I'd be able to accept him as a face.
Yeah.
I think he needs to be a heel. So
it'd fit better Suzuki, yeah.
That's what I'd suggest anyway. I mean, that's if he goes to New Japan. He may not. This is literally just the most speculative that we can be because we've got literally as much clue as anyone.
Yeah. But I mean, going back to something that I said earlier, I mean, this is a massive opportunity for these talents to see it as, a chance for them to reinvent themselves and always come back as a completely different entity altogether. And Eric Rowan, for example, I've never really classed him as a very captivating character, but he could use his time to come up with a new gimmick and a new character and really kind of market himself using social media as a new performer, essentially. So it's an exciting opportunity for one or two of them because of that.
Yeah, and going across the person I mentioned earlier, Drake Maverick, this one probably hurt the most, in my opinion. His passion for this industry is like unquestionable. He's one of the best people to ever come out of the UK, in my opinion. He's so charismatic. He's got such a brilliant mind for the business as well. And to see him, he was just loving life in WWE. He really was. And to see that he was finally getting a chance to showcase himself in the Cruiserweight tournament, which they're still going to allow him to do. So that's good of them. But after that, he's going. It was really emotional. And could it be where he was on about his last 3 matches? It seems like he's somebody that will retire if he doesn't get re-signed with WWE.
But like you say, Kurt, he's got such a passion for the business and such a talented performer, whether it be as a comedy act or whether it be as an in-ring talent. And I think because of, he's not got the size, but he's got everything else that makes up for it. And I think because of who he is and how passionate he is about the sport, I was very, very emotional for him yesterday when the news first broke. But now thinking about it retrospectively, I'm looking forward to his future, and I think he does have a very bright future. I think out of, a lot of the wrestlers you've mentioned, Kurt, I think he's one of the ones that will land on his feet because of all of the very, very positive elements that he has inside of him.
Yes, and last night, Alex Shane, who's very well known over here in the UK, running Wrestle Talk and things like that, he tweeted out basically just every different company that there is. DAW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, AAA, Ring of Honor, having promoted shows for the over 20 years featuring some of the biggest names in the industry. I'd like to say WWE Maverick is today the most professional and hottest free agent in the business. Sign him up.
Yeah.
And that speaks absolute volumes about him as a person, about him as a talent, about him as a character.
He's great in the ring. He is fantastic in the ring.
Absolutely. For me, he was one of the 3 that cut deepest, along with Heath Slater, which absolutely wounded me, and then Zack Ryder, who has one of the best WrestleMania moments that I've ever witnessed. And yeah, those three especially really did affect me as a fan. I thought, they were heartbreaking.
Well, going into those, the other two then, Zack Ryder, 15 years in WWE, Heath Slater, 16 years. Two people that, despite all the obstacles, they've just entertained and put 200% into whatever they do. And Zack Ryder, again, 15 years, former IC title, which is one of the best moments you was mentioning, at WrestleMania 32, winning that ladder match, having that moment with his dad. And then, obviously, he's been a two-time Raw Tag Team Champion with Kurt Hawkins. What's your favourite moments about? So, you've mentioned the WrestleMania. Like, throughout his career, what are your highlights, both of you, on Zack Ryder?
For me, it's the fact that he bet on himself. The fact that he and in the same kind of vein, Heath Slater did as well. They were overlooked, and they were kind of like jobbers, and they got themselves over, and that's always going to be like the kind of defining character of Zack Ryder for me. The fact that he was a nobody to people in WWE, and then he did the Long Island story, absolutely got himself over and got him into a position where WWE had to do something with him because he was so big. That for me, it's that character work that stands out for me against Zack Ryder, because you can't really say he's had a lot of chances in the ring, to be fair. Outside the WrestleMania moment, he's not really had a lot of chances to shine. So for me, Zack Ryder, it's the fact that he made himself a big star. And yeah, the guy, it's just heartbreaking to see that he's been cut, but then his wife is still there currently. Whether she still will be at the end of this, who knows?
Yeah, I kind of package Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins pretty much in the same box. To be honest with you, very talented, very good characters, very infectious characters. And I don't know if either of you saw, but there was an FCW documentary on the WWE network that dropped a month or so ago, and there was an awful lot of Heath Slater on there because he was a former FCW champion, of course. And even back then, before he came up onto the main roster, he was so infectious, and he kind of was very confident in himself. And when he did come up in one of the early NXT series, he was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've got to say, I did like more of his comedic stuff. I did like his 3MB stuff, if I'm honest with you, because he never really got the chance to shine as a serious wrestler. But that just demonstrated how talented he was as a performer, and how dedicated he was to putting on entertainment. And much the same for Zack Ryder. I think my fondest memory of Zack Ryder, to be honest with you, was as part of his early tag team. Was it the Edgeheads with Kurt Hawkins when it's part of
Major Brothers?
And they even appeared in that was it the WrestleMania 24 main event when Edge headlined against Undertaker, and they came out and caused a distraction or tried to attack Taker. But and then you go back to WrestleMania 28 when after the YouTube series caught fire and he was really over, and then he was part of that big kind of All Stars 10-man tag, and I think he actually took the pin for his team in the end. But those are just really fun, memorable moments from those two that I'll remember forever, to be honest with you. And like you say, because they are very passionate, very talented, good on the microphone as characters or in the ring, I think, they do still have a future ahead of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Zach, Heath, and as you mentioned, Kurt Hawkins, they'll have no problem going elsewhere. I think writing's probably on the wall with Zack Ryder. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't end up in AEW, just because of how close he is with Cody Rhodes. And we'll see the real Matt Cardona, I'm guessing. And Cody actually took to social media to talk about what Zack Ryder said. I'm not going to go through it because it is one of the longer quotes, hence why it's on Instagram. Like, it's just practically a novel. But one thing that I want to just pull out is Cody said he has a little rule, and that's if you've ever gotten over in wrestling, you can always do it again.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a new Matt Cardona that we're going to see, which is going to be different to Zack Ryder. And whether that's with Kurt Hawkins, it'll be going as the Brian Myers name again. Obviously, them two, they've got such a history together. We mentioned it, the two-time Raw Tag Team Champions, but then they've also been OVW Southern Tag Team Champions, Deep South Wrestling Tag Champions, New York Wrestling Connection Tag Champions as well on multiple occasions. So we've either got another strong tag team there, or we're going to see a completely different Matt Cardona.
Yeah, just one final thing on them too, though, is with Zack Ryder and Heath Slater. Their biggest problem was they got themselves over.
Yeah.
And WWE, as much as they say you got to reach for them brass rings, they truly didn't like it when those two got themselves over with their characters. The He's Got Kids and the YouTube series and Internet Champion, and they got themselves over, and that was their cardinal sin. And since then, they've not really been used to any great capacity. So hopefully they can do it again.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I think they've been sitting too many of their best years on the bench, unfortunately, and hopefully they've still got some years ahead of them to show what they're worth.
Yeah, no, I think the best of those two are probably to come. I think Heath would be a fantastic fit for NWA. I think he'd be fantastic in that environment, and he'd suit that environment. And yeah, Heath, obviously 24/7 champion. He's stuck with Nexus as well. 3-time team champion with Justin Gabriel. Obviously, the inaugural SmackDown tag champion with Rhino as well. So there's plenty of places where he could pop up, whether it's going to be Ring of Honor to be with Justin Gabriel, or Impact Wrestling for a Rhino reunion, or just who's going to be Heath Miller.
Mm-hmm. And out of all the wrestlers on there, I think Heath is the one who I'd like to see come back, and it's for one selfish reason. It's to complete that trilogy of the three-man band all coming back and becoming world champion. Is it likely? Probably not, but it would just be a great kind of fitting end to that trilogy, because they were not given a chance as three-man band, and they all got themselves over, and then they've all eventually been cut. 2 of them have been brought back and become world champions. Please let it happen for Heath.
Although it'd be great to see him get that world championship, I'm just saying that'd be the perfect way to turn Drew heel, where Heath comes back and it's a more serious Heath, and he's working his way up, and Drew's like, look, you're my best friend, you're like my brother, I want to give you this shot because you deserve it. And all of a sudden, Drew's not being able to beat Heath Slater, and he just can't get it done. And Heath's just fighting, showing his heart, showing that underdog spirit. Can you imagine that crowd reaction when Heath's kicking out of everything, and he's literally as if it's Rocky against Apollo Creed, where he's just got nothing, but he's still standing on his feet somehow, and then Drew turns heel to get the job done? Can you imagine that crowd reaction?
Yeah,
like
it'd be amazing. But
that'd be the fairy tale for them.
Knowing WWE did bring him back and he'd job out to Drew in like 5 seconds and then be cut again.
Stop spoiling my fun, Mags. But no, I'm sure they'll be fine. They really will. And Sarah Logan, she was before Deonna Purrazzo, she was the first main roster the only main roster female to be released. Again, somebody that's been underutilized in my opinion, and again, any women's division in the world will benefit from adding Sarah Logan into their roster.
Yeah, and it's another highly personal one. She's not long ago got married to Ray Rowe, the Viking Raiders, so it shows that the WWE are not bothered about splitting up these couples and sending one packing. And I felt that after being involved in the Elimination Chamber, kind of out of nowhere, that we were going to get maybe a bit of a push for her. I didn't realise that push would be out of the door.
You shouldn't be making me laugh over this, but no, it is a crying shame. But again, it's somebody where she can go think of some stuff to do, really work on herself, and then just take over the world because she's got the tools to do it.
Yep, and to be fair, female wrestling is hot. It's absolutely on fire. And what if they can kind of sustain that when we get back to a normality, the female wrestlers they're in short supply, so she can literally go to near the top of any division. I mean, imagine her in the likes of Stardom. Oof,
Yeah,
she'd be amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
No,
I think that her and Deonna could really set the world alight in Ring of Honor, the Women of Honor's division. I think that would be a really cool move for her. But I mean, we mentioned that she's married to is it Ray Rowe? You mentioned there, Mags. But
Ray Rowe,
have we mentioned Rusev yet? And his wife's just signed a new contract. She signed a 5-year contract at the end of last year, and now he's gone. So and he was massively over. We've spoken about people that were over and that were kind of left on the shelf or not utilised. I mean, let's talk a bit about Rusev.
Yeah, Rusev.
And they had an English.
True.
Because they were in the same.
Yeah.
They both got over in the same situation. Yeah. Rusev wasn't a shock to me at all. It really wasn't. Knowing that the contract negotiations were going on, knowing that he was kind of holding them up. I expected it, and like John has said earlier, WWE and probably Vince don't like the fact that he was over, and they did what they could to kind of temper that kind of that fan base for Rusev there. It's probably the biggest name on that list in terms of star power, but it's not the biggest shock.
No, it's not at all. It's just surprising. Like, knowing they were married, he booked Lana into a relationship with Lashley, essentially. Where, yep, you're gonna do all this sexual, explicit stuff with each other on TV, and now they're like, Lana, you can stay, but your husband's going. Like, for the life of me, I hope it doesn't get in the way of their relationship. But Rusev's one that I'm excited with, and Aiden English as well. Like, Aiden, he recently said that his in-ring work's not done, so it'll be interesting to see what he'll do, and I'm sure he won't struggle for work. But with Rusev, I think that's the marquee guy, in my opinion. That for me, you could sign Rusev for any company, and he'll be in a world title match, and it'll be believable, and it'll be selling out. Whether that's going to New Japan and staring Naito down face to face, or he's going to New Japan and having that debut match against Kazuchika Okada, like, those two would. Rusev in New Japan in the G1, that is the dream for everybody. I think, just to see those big hard hitting matches of Rusev versus Tomohiro Ishii, they'd be fantastic. Like, those matches would be incredible. But then I think he's so popular with the American audience that AEW, like, he'd happily go into the main event and people would be happy. And one thing that will annoy me, yes, I don't want AEW to sign too many WWE guys, but I think it's different to what, like, say, TNA did. TNA signed a lot of people that was past their prime, or just weren't quite there, but still pushed them higher. But then you're going to have people where they complain, oh, the Revival aren't being booked the way they should be. Oh, Rusev ain't being booked the way they should be. These should be tag champions. These should be going for the world title. AEW sign them. We'll push them in those roles. Oh, why AEW just pushing these people that were mid-card into the mid? And I don't think you can win in that retrospect. I think anybody that complains that Rusev and Revival going to AEW would be a surprise, because it's fan favourites that people have clamoured to be used better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't want AEW to become this like WWE but there's marquee signings, and he is a marquee signing. And in this kind of wrestling landscape, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who hasn't been in the WWE system at some point, because we know they've hoarded the talent. They've got anyone who's got any kind of name value and dragged them in. So the majority of wrestlers, unless you've grown them yourselves or you've plucked them from the indies, are going to have some sort of history with WWE. But any company, whether you are not putting on any wrestling right now, you need to put feelers out to Rusev, because he will get snapped up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, to touch on a point that I mentioned earlier, I don't really want AEW to lose its identity, but I would prefer that if these talents were to end up in AEW, all well and good, but I'd like them to go and find themselves and to create their own identity around the world first, and then come to AEW, not as WWE cast-offs, but as somebody that's kind of found themselves, won championships and other promotions, tested themselves in Japan, tested themselves in the UK and around Europe, and then eventually ended up in AEW. And I think that would sit better with me.
Yeah, I can understand that, but I think from a business standpoint from AEW, would you risk somebody else signing Rusev?
Exactly. That would be my thought. If I was in Tony Khan or Cody's shoes, I'd be looking down that list and be, all these talent are exceptional. We could do with them, but Rusev, we need to make sure we try and get Rusev.
Yeah, and I'd treat it as you would Moxley, where we've signed Moxley, he's off to go do the G1, but he's our guy. I'd treat it as that. Let them do these matches like you said, Johners, but with the security of he's still AEW's guy. But I agree. They can't really... I'd take a tag team and maybe take one of the females, and I'd take a singles competitor. Any more than that would be... It would be as if, bloody hell, this is too many people. But then any less than that, then it could be, look, you're missing out of some talent just to say, oh, we're not just signing WWE guys. Because, again, we've got Matt Cardona, we've got Heath Miller, we've now got Rusev, and we've got Leo Rush. I think they're 4 big names that would be useful along with the Revivalers for mentioned. And it leads us to, I think this is a first, from going in the main event of WrestleMania to now the release list was Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson.
And it was interesting how they were both announced, because Anderson was announced in the first kind of batch, and then Luke didn't come through for an hour or so. They only just signed 5-year deals as well. About 3 or 4 months ago? Yeah. It was quite a shock, and I think there's only one place that they go. To be fair, I think they go back to Japan. Obviously, Carl Anderson's got a hot Asian wife, as he says. But again, they both seemed to be happy in the role that they were in. They weren't really complainers. You didn't really hear of them kicking up a fuss. You heard it more from fans who were like, "You're wasting the Good Brothers." But then you'd have Carl coming back and saying, "I'm living my best life here. I'm getting paid. I get to spend a lot more time with my family." It's just if there were some shocks, there were definitely shocks, because, like you said, they were less than a month ago. They were headlining WrestleMania, and now. Yeah. Now they are without a job. It's shocking.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that the natural fit, as Max just described, is New Japan, because that's where they really kind of came into prominence and really started to make a name for themselves within the Bullet Club. But I, kind of looking into their personal lives, I think they are happy being back home in North America. So maybe they're looking to stay stateside for the meantime.
Yeah, it's one of those where, again, these are a team where people are screaming AEW, but AEW have a lot of tag teams not getting used their best, because it's just so stacked. You can't have the Young Bucks, you can't have Lucha Bros, Proud and Powerful, the Revival, the Club, Best Friends, and all these other teams building around, as well as Omega and Page being created. You can't have that many teams, because not everybody can get used. So I would rather see them go to New Japan, do some stuff there before eventually maybe going to AEW. I think NWA, that's one where I would like to see, just because of Carl Anderson's history with the NWA as well. During his American independent days, he did quite a lot of stuff. He was the NWA World Tag Team Champion with Joey Ryan. In NWA Midwest, he was the Heartland States Heavyweight Champion. He was the British Commonwealth Heavyweight Champion in NWA UK. So with that sort of NWA history, it'd be really good to do some digital content telling the story of Carl Anderson. And whether it's as a tag team with Gallows or you're having Anderson go after the £10 of gold, I think he'd be a great fit for that. And yeah, I'd prefer him to stay away from AEW for now, do New Japan and do either Ring of Honor, MLW, Impact Wrestling, or NWA.
Yep, sounds good. I mean, I know that Luke has got a tattoo business in the States as well. And obviously, like we've said, Carl has said he's really enjoying being back stateside. So perhaps staying stateside would be good for them. Ring of Honor would be clamoring out. I mean, the Good Brothers versus the Briscoes. Whew, that would be a dream match. Like I said, the links with NWA. So the possibilities are there, and they are two big names. Obviously, still carrying that kind of Bullet Club lineage. So yeah, there are two more people who I'm not particularly worried about in terms of getting work. It's just a shame that they weren't utilised to how they should have been in WWE.
Yeah, and it's also an opportunity. I mean, we've spoken a lot about New Japan and AEW and where these individuals might end up. It's a great opportunity for the likes of Ring of Honor, MLW, Impact, to get one or two of these bigger names and to raise their profile, because as good as they have been in the past, their profile has dropped a lot in the last couple of years. So this could be an opportunity where some of those, a Zack Ryder, a Kurt Hawkins, or, Gallows and Anderson could drop onto a lesser brand, dare I say it, and elevate their profile as well. So it might not all be about AEW. It could be about some of the other kind of middle of the road promotions, and it could really elevate their profile altogether. I'd say it's a good opportunity for them as a promotion.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up, because AEW can't sign everybody. They can't sign everybody. They haven't got the room to sign everybody. It'd be bad business to sign everybody. And that's why I think the landscape of professional wrestling has changed, because we're going to have more releases. People will go back to WWE, but there's so much good talent with a bigger name now. I'm sorry to say it, but whatever you do before WWE, barring Cody making his name for himself now and the Bucks Omega, 9 times out of 10, your stock goes up because of WWE. Your social media presence goes through the roof because it's just a bigger audience. So I think with those going to like MLW, Ring of Honor, there's so many options available. And I think it's just a perfect way. Like after this episode coming, probably within a week's time, we'll have my One More Match series, which I've done before, where we'll talk about some of these high-profile releases and what matches we'd like to see them have. And we'll try and stick away from just doing them in New Japan, them in AEW, just to try and see if, hey, Rusev, he could go to Ring of Honor and have killer matches with Roosh. He could go to Impact Wrestling and just battle it out with Michael Elgin. He could go to MLW and go face Filthy Tom Lawler or Jacob Fatu. Like, so many good matches. You can make sure you check out One More Match here on Kurt's Angle Podcast. And just as a closing note, like, don't be tweeting out saying, why is this person still working for WWE, yet you've released these? The amount of people that have been saying that, nobody deserves a job more than somebody else. Just because you don't like them doesn't mean, oh, this person should be released or that person should be released. If it's out of, oh, I hope this person does so he gets the opportunity to be creative and this person has wanted to leave, that's all well and done. But for wishing somebody to become unemployed, especially during this climate where, like we've touched up on, you may not be able to go straight into work, I think it's just a shit thing to do. So whether it's to me, Mags, Johners, or especially to the individuals, all I'd say is tweet them, let them know about your favourite moments of theirs. If you've had pictures or if you've been at the shows, tweet them out and try and make their day, because these people, they sacrifice their life for us. So make sure that you give them the appreciation they deserve and just let us know your favourite bits about their career so far. So, Johners, tell everybody about Wrestling with Johners. Tell them about all the great work you've got coming up. Where can they find you?
So I mean, we released two 2 episodes per week. One tends to be a bonus episode, maybe an interview, and we do our regular weekly episode every Saturday, where we have pretty much a different content creator, podcaster, YouTuber every single week. So we try to keep it fresh, and unless of course you're Kurt and Max, who have been on the show quite a few times. But you can find us on all popular podcast platforms, so Apple, Spotify, Podbean. We're all over YouTube as well. You can check out our website, wrestlingwithjonas.com. We've got all of our content up there, all of our interviews, all of our podcast archives, merchandise, articles, and so much more. And if you want to catch us on Twitter, you can do just simply @withjonas_pod.
Thank you. And Mags, where can they find you?
Well,
Mags All Pods, right, guys? This podcast, the time that you've listened now is going to double because Mags is everywhere.
It's been an absolute whirlwind in the life of me as a podcast recorder. I don't know how I've been so lucky. I am literally just an idiot from the northwest of England, and I've just looked upon some good ideas of podcasting, and it's took me where I definitely shouldn't be. But I have 3 podcasts currently. I have 5 Rounds, which is about actual proper fighting, UFC, which are short episodes recently because there's no UFC. I've also got Why Watch, where I speak to content creators and fans of wrestling to find out why they love this wacky sport of people in their underpants pretending to fight. And then I've also got Badlands, where I get guests on and we talk about the Mount Rushmores of wrestling, but we don't just stick to the standard Mount Rushmore of the greatest wrestler. We'll have a different topic and we'll kind of thrash it out with the guest and come up with a Mount Rushmore of, for instance, the greatest title belts, or as Jonas was on, the greatest the draft of cruiserweights. So it just brings a little bit of fun back into wrestling, which right now we definitely need. You can follow me on Twitter @DAJKirkby. That's where you'll find everything. I've recently we've joined Chairshot, which Kurt is now a member of, and I'm so proud of him for coming across to the dark side. And my stuff is now on Smart to Death Radio, which has absolutely blown me away. Just the reception I've had. Thank you everyone for listening. It's just amazing. Come and give me a follow on Twitter, have a chat. If you want to be on the show, absolutely. Just DM me and listen to these 2 guys as well, because as popular as mine, and I don't want to blow smoke up my own arse, but as popular as my shows have become, these guys put out quality shows way better than I could ever produce. So definitely go and follow Jonas and Curtie, because their shows are outstanding.
You're too kind,
Thank
sir.
you.
Too kind.
Yeah.
I'd say probably the next time people see you on Kurt's Angle podcast, it'll probably be 3/4 of the show talking Mags and how many podcasts he's got.
Stop that nonsense.
I'm picturing Chris Jericho in the ring, listed all the wrestling moves. That's you. Listed all your podcasts and networks you'll be on. And again, you can find myself at Kurt's Angle Pod. You can find my personal account at Kurt Johansson93, and you can also find me over with the Ringsider Boys, Jamie and Callum, at Ringsiders Pod. What we've had recently, my Chairshot debut with Nathan Cruz. That interview came out recently, which Nathan's a great guy, somebody I know. Second time being able to interview him, which was such a pleasure. And we've had quite a few interviews over at Kurt's Angle Pod that recently came out. Alexis Falcon, Corey McRae, which was kind of like my first one with partnership with Turnbuckle TV. And then the work that I'm doing with Reach Wrestling as well, with LA Taylor, the Hotshot Kyle Parker, they've been released. I'm releasing Aurora, which will be dropping on Friday. So this should be out tonight. So it should be dropping tomorrow. Or if this has dropped on Friday, then it's dropping today alongside this one. So make sure you check out that one. Fantastic. And again, we've got some more interviews coming up with the Ringsiders Pod guys. We just released our first reaction last night regarding some of the earlier releases and some more great interviews. Callum and Jamie have recently interviewed plenty of guys from NWA like Zicky Dyson, Royce Isaacs and Joe Galley. So make sure you check those out as well. This has been Kurt's Angle Pod. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening.